Hi, everybody. Welcome to Moving Markets for March the 19th, 2019. We are a Tuesday right now. A little late getting to the microphone today. The U.S. markets have been open for a good 5 hours right now. It's 12:30 my time, 2:30 Eastern time. So we're most of the way through the trading day. Got another hour and a half to go before stocks have finished trading for the day. It's been an interesting day already. And this is going to be tough to really tell you what's moving the markets, because the reality is fear and headlines are moving the markets. Now that's the case more often than not lately, but it is what it is. It's the reality of the world we live in right now. Headlines more than anything else are what moves the market. Good headlines or bad headlines. This morning, the Dow started out really strong. The U.S. markets opened. The Dow was up over 100 points rather quickly, stayed around 120 points up to 87 points up for a good portion of the day. Boeing was having a good day, not huge, but certainly a better day than it's had for the past couple of weeks. It wasn't selling off or doing anything ugly. Boeing, by the way, right now as we speak, is still up about 0.75%. So it beats the heck out of being down, and Boeing carries so much weight with the Dow Jones Industrial Average that we'd rather have it up than down, it's for sure. But everything was looking good this morning, and the Dow actually climbed as high as almost 200 points up. I think it came up around $189, $190 a share. And then all of a sudden, and I'm not exaggerating this, in a matter of a minute or two, the Dow went from being up almost 200 points to only being up 8 points. And it was on this headline news. Bloomberg News reported, citing people familiar with the matter, that U.S. officials are worried China may be pushing back against U.S. demands in the country's ongoing trade talks. The report also said Chinese negotiators are worried they have not received assurances that tariffs imposed on Chinese goods would be lifted once a deal is struck. All right. That caused the Dow Jones Industrial Average to shed 170 points or more, 180 points or more. Let me tell you, I'm gonna share with you one of my biggest pet peeves about trying to trade today's markets, because that is absolutely asinine and that is absolutely foolish for people who have control of your money. For you, if you have control, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to shoot straight with you. If you're the one controlling your money, if you have other people controlling your money, and based on that type of news report, they are dumping you out of things, get your money out of their hands. And if you're doing it yourself, put yourself in check and stop watching the news. Plain and simple. Just stop watching the news. What a weak basis to that report. What weak data. Let me read this again. Citing people familiar with the matter. Let me tell you what that means. Citing people familiar with the matter. People who think they know what's going on. This is my interpretation for you. People who think they know what's going on but are not involved in the trade talks at all themselves. That's the interpretation. Citing people familiar with the matter, that U.S. officials are worried China may be pushing back. Interpretation, we have no freaking clue what China is saying because we're not involved in it. And isn't it only natural that China may be pushing back? That's what negotiations are, you idiots. Negotiations are, we're going to push, you're going to push, we're going to give, you're going to give, and we're going to find somewhere in the middle and some common ground where we can meet. That's the whole purpose you negotiate. Negotiations aren't, me coming in and saying, hey, look, this is what I want. And you saying, yeah, okay, that sounds good. That's not a negotiation. That's a demand being met. A negotiation can involve, hey, we want you to do this. And you say, well, we're not willing to do that. We're willing to maybe come this far. And you say, well, I need you to go a little bit farther. You say, okay, I'll go this far, but not this far. That's what a negotiation is. It's pushback. It's pushback from both sides. What kind of a moron writes an article that says China may be pushing against U.S. demands in the country's ongoing trade talks? Of course they are. If they weren't pushing, a deal would have been done already. I'm really worked. Can you tell I'm really, really worked up today? This report is so nonsensical, and yet the Dow Jones experienced 180+% drop on this report. If you've got money managers handling your money and they sold off based on that report, get the money away from them. They are screwing you over. They do not know what they're doing. Oh my gosh, this is one of those ones I just can't believe. I know headlines push the markets around. I know when we hear from an official, not citing people familiar with the matter, but from an actual U.S. We hear something from Lighthouser, we hear something from Larry Kudlow, we hear something from President Trump, we hear something from Ambassador Bolton, I think he's National Security Advisor now. When we hear from people who are involved, not people familiar with other people close to the matter, what a load of crap that is. When you hear something definitive from someone who is involved in the talks, then there's a lot of times an overreaction, but you can understand that there's going to be a reaction. People are going to buy or sell based on their news. We're never going to get away from headline-driven markets. That's the reality of the world we live in. It used to be that two things drove the market: financial reports and corporate earnings. And no one put spin on them. They just gave you the numbers and let you make the decision. And that's what drove the markets up, or that's what drove the markets down. Now we get markets being driven up or down on headlines, on how an economic report is spun, on how an earnings report is spun. That's the reality. You got to learn to trade that way. You've got to learn to be in the market and survive that. But when you get a report that says China negotiators are worried that they have not received assurances that tariffs imposed on Chinese goods will be lifted once a deal is struck, that's just made up nonsense. I guarantee you, whoever wrote that article for Bloomberg ought to lose their job before the day is over. They're making crap up. I guarantee you, if you press them for their sources, they'll say, I have to protect my sources. That's what they would do. If you press the person who wrote that report to get their sources, and then if they had sources who, if they do, they're making crap up. If you press those sources to say, who did you hear that from? They're going to say, well, I can't say. And interpretation, I made this crap up. There's nothing to it. I needed to get my name on a headline. I needed to get an article out there for my editor. I wrote this ambiguous enough that nothing is going to be fact checked. Nothing is going to, I'm not going to have to prove anything. I just made the garbage up. They printed it. The market sold off almost 200 points. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Shortly after that report, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average was only up 8 points on the day, having been up over 180, someone else reported that talks were in the final stages, noting that the China Vice Premier Li He, I don't know if I pronounced that right, will travel to Washington in the next few weeks. And even though we didn't go nearly as far as going back up to the 26,100 mark on the Dow, it was back up at one point in time, almost 100 points. As I'm doing this presentation right now, I told you it's 12:42 Mountain Time, so it's 2:42 on the East Coast. The U.S. stock market is a little less than an hour and 20 minutes away from being closed for the day. The Dow is up almost 60 points. The S&P is up 36. The S&P is up 8. The NASDAQ is up 36. We've recovered a lot, but man, how awful is it that a made-up report? And I'm not the world's biggest YouTube celebrity. I don't have millions and millions of followers on YouTube. But if anyone listening to me right now today, if anyone listening knows anyone at Bloomberg, I am inviting the writer of that article to be on my program with me tomorrow. And I will ask the writer of that article, he or she, I don't even know if it's a he or she, I will ask the writer of that article if they can give any information on sources. Thomas Frank. Thomas, if you're out there listening, the Bloomberg report, it's just made up. It's 100% totally made up. This is the actual Bloomberg report from 2 hours ago. Some U.S. officials fear that China is reneging on certain trade concessions. Two others said that Beijing negotiators have shifted their stance because they're not convinced Washington will lift tariffs imposed. That's just bullcrap. We're not going to get a deal with China that includes lifting tariffs and then say, oh, now that you've signed the deal, we're not going to lift tariffs. How nonsensical is that? People are morons. And then Dow Jones later reported that trade talks are in the final stages. Actually, Thomas Frank I apologize. This is CNBC's news report that is contrasting the two different reports. I think Thomas Frank is writing for Thomas. I apologize. I think Thomas Frank is writing for CNBC, if I'm understanding this correct. And he's giving an update on these two different reports. I'm going to go to, I may or may not find it right now. Going to Bloomberg.com real quick. The actual report on Bloomberg.com from Jenny Leonard, Saleha Moshin, and Jennifer Jacobs. I'm sorry, ladies. Jenny, Saleha, Jennifer, you're making crap up. I promise. Any one of you or all three of you are welcome to join me for my program. I will conference call you in. We'll set this up so that you can be a guest on the program. And if any one of you or all of you are willing to get on my program tomorrow, I will have you here, and you will have to relate to me some information about your sources, because I believe this is 100% made up. I believe these people fabricated this information, or I'll give them an out, or they are listening to people who are making it up, and they'll protect those sources so that they're not exposed for having done no digging or no corroborating of the information. It is a bunch of baloney. This did not happen. No one in China that has any authority to do so is saying we think the U.S. is going to renege, and no one who is close to the matter in the U.S., no one who is involved in the matter in the U.S. has said that they're worried about China pushing back. China is supposed to be pushing back, and we're supposed to be pushing back when they push back, and that's how negotiations get done. Now, I'm so fired up about this. I'm so upset that the idiocy of people selling on this information. And I believe that probably the markets rebounded when all those brilliant, highly educated, Ivy League school money market managers, brokers, all these people with their big fancy titles and big fancy degrees go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have sold off that fast because there really isn't much to that story that's news. Oh my gosh, people, think about who's controlling your money. Manage your money yourself. Learn what we're doing at Safe Option Strategies. The intent wasn't to turn this into a plug for my education. Go to safeoptionstrategies.com, watch our introduction video on the link that says learn the right ways to trade the market, and take your money away from your broker and trade it yourself. You will do so much better than these morons with their overpriced degrees. And haven't we learned recently that college analysts cracked up to be because people are cheating to get in, they're paying exorbitant amounts of money to get in, and no one gives a rat's butt where your college education is from when it's a worthless liberal piece of crap education. I promise you that is a fact. Get control of your money yourself. You don't have to spend a ton of time doing it. It's not expensive to do, and you will do so much better than these moron brokers are doing who sell off at a news article like that. And folks, for the Dow Jones to drop 200 points in a matter of a couple of minutes, it means a lot of those Ivy League educated brokers were selling off when they heard that news without verifying it, without corroboration. And then some cooler heads prevailed, and some intelligence moved back in, and it's got the Dow up over 60 now, and the NASDAQ up over 36, the S&P 8.5. This is a short presentation today. I'm only 13 minutes in. I usually go about 20 minutes. If I talk anymore, I'm going to get more fired up and more riled up about it. I'll tell you what's pushing the markets today. Stupidity, plain and simple. No verifiable, credible headlines are pushing the market. No smarts or intelligence is pushing the market. Stupidity pushed the markets down. Thank heavens they're coming at least partway back up. And hopefully by the time things close today, the Dow will have held on to maybe 100-point gains. That's what I'm predicting. I'm out of here. I'm too upset about what used to be journalism is total crap today. And that goes for most journalists. Not all. I won't paint the brush broad enough to say most of you or say all of you, but most of what used to be journalists is just full on garbage, and people just make crap up to get their stuff printed. I'm out of here. I hope the market finishes high, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Bye.